Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we are tackling the 15th hole at the Country Club at Pocatello. Last episode we finished up this 14th hole, a beautiful par 5 going up the hill alongside this waste bunker here. And in today's episode we are going to tackle the hole that's on the other side of the waste bunker with this green perched right up above it. This is likely going to be the last episode of this course before PGA 2K23 comes out, and I'm really excited for the new game and excited to make new content there. But the plan is to finish this hole, and then once I've done this hole, I'm going to port everything over to 2K23, which is coming out October 14th. So coming up very close here, and I have my fingers crossed that this game is very similar to the game that we're playing currently here, PGA 2K21, and that the object meter and all of the other stuff associated with the course designer stays pretty similar so that we can actually have a clean port over to the new game and then publish it once we finish it there. So the plan is to finish hole 15 in this episode, and then holes 16 and 17 we are going to save until PGA 2K23 does come out. But with all that being said, let's come back here to the 15th hole, which is the focus of today's episode, and we are going to be making a relatively short par 4, only 378 yards, and I've got a good idea of how I want this hole to look. So this green is poking out into this waste area here, and it's raised up on the cliff, much like this 14th fairway is, and the plan is to have it's a pretty simple concept. This fairway is going to run out at about 274, so you're not going to be able to hit driver unless you're willing to take on a pretty narrow fairway right here. I have this little distance marker laid out at 24 yards. I think that's going to be the width of the fairway that runs along this left edge of the cliff. And what the benefit of being able to fit driver up into here, not necessarily saying that that's the right play, because probably the right play is just to lay it back to here and still leave yourself 115 yards. But the plan is to put maybe a bunker or two right here in front, and then I might extend this back out a little bit. I might need a little bit more room. But if you can get driver up into here, you can take these bunkers out of play and have a relatively simple pitch shot down to this green. So it's a simple concept. It's just it's going to test whether or not you are willing to take on this tee shot, this narrow driving area with driver, or if you want to just lay it back and give yourself more of a full wedge into the screen. So that's the plan with this hole. Right now, I'm going to go in and I'm going to lay out some of the bunkering and some of the waste bunker areas, because I think that this hole is going to look really, really nice, because I'm going to put a waste bunker from here, kind of extending along into here, and then I'm going to nestle this tee box of the 16th hole up on top of one of these dunes, and I think it's going to be a really cool effect having the next tee box be so close to this green right here. So that's the plan. Let's get in there and let's lay down some bunker surfaces and start seeing how this hole is going to shape up. So it's funny, I've actually laid down the bunker surfaces, and I'm already going to make a change to what I said in the introduction, because I think that I'm forward thinking here onto hole 16. I think this tee box is a little bit too low. I need this to be a little bit higher because I want to be able to see the bunker. Like I want this to be more of the view where you can see down that cliffside just a little bit. But the problem is if I'm going to have this tee box as close as I can to this green, it's going to be really unnatural. Like you can already see that this bunker is already a little bit too slopey for what I'm really hoping for with this hole. So I'm actually already calling a mulligan here. I'm going to move this tee box over just a little bit because I need that room to be able to raise this up and not make this bunker look so slopey. That's something I'm going to do here in the next time lapse, but this is generally how I want this hole to play, because as you can see, it's a pretty narrow green, and if you can get your driver up into here, I'm gonna have a little bit of a slope here that's gonna kick the ball and be able to get it down to a pin over here. But it's only gonna be about 16 yards deep. It's gonna be even a little bit less than that once I lay the green surfaces down. So it's gonna be a very narrow wedge shot into this green. If you decide to lay it up to 130 yards, you don't have a very comfortable wedge in your hand. And that's kind of the point of this hole. It's to reward players who are willing to take driver on this little area here, but it's not necessarily supposed to be the hardest hole because really this is only a 370-yard hole. You're still going to have a wedge in your hand and you should be able to give yourself a birdie putt most of the time. So yeah, with that out of the way, the only other thing that I wanted to talk about was this fairway, and it's just going to be a pretty basic fairway because really the only part of the hole that's going to be in play is this section up here. So I'm probably just going to have some of this waist bunkering kind of encircling it like I normally do on this course, like I have over here, and we're just going to be able to it's going to be a pretty wide fairway all the way up to about in this 275 range, and then it's going to start pinching in, and it's going to be a little bit more narrow as you get up here further into the neck of this fairway. So I'm going to lay this green surface down. I'm going to get the green looking the way that I want it to because I think I have a good idea of how this hole should play, especially at the green, and then we're going to get the fairway in. So we got a bunch of surfaces to lay down. Let's get in there and let's do it. All the surfaces are down here at the 15th hole, and I think it's all come out pretty much the way that I wanted to. I wanted to show you the green here. I think this is a really nice green for the way that I want the strategy of this hole to play, which is if you get it up here, you have a little bit better of an angle into the green, and you can use some of these slopes to get it to these get it closer to these back pins over here and here, and then you've got good angles to this one and to this one where you don't have to take on as much of this front left bunker that's right here. The fairway back here is almost 50 yards wide, and that's by design because I want this to be a pretty easy layup. If you're not going to try and get driver up into this area, I want it to be a pretty easy shot that gets you to right here and leaves yourself a wedge in your hand. So you really have to evaluate the risk. It's not as easy of a decision as, oh, it's a tough hole anyway, let me just hit driver. Might as well hit driver in case I hit a good one. I want it to be, okay, I can just lay it up to here and have 120 yards, or I can try and push my luck and get it up into here and bring in this valley and this waist area. Now, speaking of this valley and waist area over here, I'm not quite sure how I want to plan it. Part of me wants it to look like hole number 6, which let me take you over there real quick. I should have said number 7 because it's the number 7 tee box. You can see how I have these rocks here, and it makes the illusion that this is a cliffside. And I think it does a good job of making some of these awkward giant slopes on a course like this look a little bit more natural and organic. So I'm thinking about adding this kind of planting right up in here on hole number 15, where the rocks come around. They make this really artificially elevated slope look a lot more natural, and I think the rocks would do a good job of that. So I'm definitely going to try that as we get into planting this hole. And if that doesn't work, we can always change it to something else, because we can always just grass this. I've messed around with just putting heavy rough on this slope here, and it actually looks pretty good on this not so steep slope that I have on 14. I think the heavy rough might be the idea for over here. With these more aggressive slopes, it's going to be harder to just put heavy rough on it, because then it just looks awkward. Grass wouldn't really grow on a slope that severe just like this one. So we're going to have to find a way to make the transition pretty smooth between maybe this heavy rough soft slope right here and more of the rocky vertical slope that we have on this green. But yeah, as you stand back on this tee, you can see this sight line is going to look pretty good, especially once we have all the trees planted in up this side and we get some of the surrounding environment to get your eyes focused on this green and kind of the fairway. So it looks a little open right now. We're gonna fix that. We're gonna get in there and put some trees down, and then I'm also gonna plant the brush as well. And you can see how there's a little bit of a gap here. I'm gonna add a couple more trees and a couple more bushes up this left side as well. So let's get the tree line in, and I think that's gonna really start to make this hole start to shape up the way that we want it to look. So let's get some trees in, and then we'll come back and we'll start the big plant once we get the trees down. As you can see, this tree line has helped tremendously frame up this hole. I think the sight line is looking really good off the tee. And once you get over to here, you can see down the 16th a little bit better, and I've actually made a couple changes up there on the 16th. I don't know if you remember in the last one, this was not all grass, and I decided to soften this slope a little bit, make it a little bit less of a cliffside, but then also make the heavy rough go all the way down to the bunker, and I did the same thing over here on 14. And I think it works really well on 14, and I think once I have more of a hole designed on hole 16, it's also going to work really well. But as you'll notice, I left a lot of the area around this green in particular because it's a lot harsher of a slope, and that's the way that I want the hole to play. I want it to be very penalizing if you miss this green, and I'm still thinking about making it out of bounds. I don't want people to get lost in the rocks like can happen in this game, but this course is also getting ported over to 2K23, so maybe I'll just leave it and then worry about that in the next game and see how it kind of plays. Another thing you'll notice I added was this tee box up here, and this is going to be another tee box for this hole. It's going to kind of be the second box off of this one, and I think it'll add to the hole a little bit. I'll be able to plant around it a little bit more, and I think it'll look really nice because it'll kind of tie the two holes together, which is what I want for these two holes. I want them to feel kind of connected even though they're separate. I want them to flow into each other really naturally, and I think adding that tee box there and making it really obvious from the fairway here on 15 that the 16th tee box is right up there, I think it does a good job tying together the two holes. But now we're going to get into some of the planting, and I think for the first part of it, I'm just going to magically pop up some of the brushing here. I'm just going to do a cut, and then the planting will be in for a lot of the typical plants that I have, you know, kind of these little sections right here. I think I'm just going to pop those in right now, and then I'm going to time lapse some of this cliffside. And I want the cliffside, that's going to be a more difficult plant, and I'm curious how it's going to go. We're just going to wing it, and yeah, hopefully it works out. I'm very nervous for this rocky cliffside, but hopefully we can get something that works. But let's get this planting in. Let's do it right now, and it's going to be complete in 3, 2, 1. Boom. We got all the plants in. Just a few of them dotted, a couple of them close, and then a lot more over by these next tee boxes. And it looks a little incomplete, and it's because I started this one right here, and I really just decided that it was not quite the time to plant them because I'm going to do this whole rocky cliff face. And if I do the rocky cliff face before I plant this, I might be changing the sculpting around a little bit, so I'm going to leave that for a little bit. And then also, it just looks a little incomplete behind the tee box because there's nothing there at the moment. Once we get in some of the waste bunkers that are going to go up there and a lot of the tree line, I think it's going to look a lot better. But at the moment, I like where we're at, and I think it looks really nice. So without any further ado, let's get into this rocky cliff face, and I'm just going to start time-lapsing this thing, and let's see what we get at the end of it. If I don't like it, I'm going to keep this in the video, and I'm going to actually change it, and I'm going to do something else. But hopefully, fingers crossed, we can get it to look like we did over there on the 7th tee box, and I think it could look really, really nice if we are able to get this looking the way that it looked over there on hole 7. So without any further ado, let's get in there, and let's start this time-lapse. Here we go. The rocky cliff is finally complete, and check out how this hole has turned out. I can't believe how good it actually looks. I was very nervous going into that time lapse because I wasn't sure quite how it was going to finish out. And now that I've got it all planted, I really, really like it. The only problem I would say is now I've got this weird section of the 16th where the fairway is going to go on 16. And I just don't quite know how I'm going to plant it yet, because I would really like to continue this style almost all the way down this whole side. But the plant meter might not agree with that decision. This was pretty plant intensive, and it does look really good, but it looks a little incomplete as it kind of just stops right here. So I haven't really decided what I'm going to do yet, and part of the reason I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet is this is the final episode of 2K21. This is going to be the final thing that I put out before I port this over to 2K23 and make my decision as to how this hole is going to continue forward, because for a couple of reasons. The first reason is I don't know anything about what the plant meter is going to be like when I port this over. I've heard some reports that it's really variable as to how the plant meter shifts from 2K21 to 2K23. Like, some courses have a lot of plant meter get added to it, and some of it actually loses some of the plant meter. So I'm really curious as to how this is going to port over, and fingers crossed it's going to give me some more plant meter, and if it does, I'm going to continue this planting all the way over. So the other thing that you'll notice is that I did end up planting some of the waste bunker areas, and as you can see from here, if I block out the spots where it's not all planted, I think it looks really good. And I'm going to just save the rest of this for 2K23, but I think the proof of concept really has come together here. If you can crop out all the areas that are unfinished, I think this looks fantastic. As a proof of concept, this is looking great, and I think this hole and this kind of connection between 14 and 15 really does a great job of showing what this is going to look like by the time we're done with this course. Now I want to pop in here and play the hole just so we can get an idea of how it's playing. So let's get into the course, let's get into a play test here, and I'm going to play it on pin 2, and I'm going to have the wind pretty high out of the southeast. I really like when this game is windy. I think it adds a lot of dynamic movement to the course. You can see the trees are kind of moving around, and I think that makes this course look so much more alive. And from what I've seen from 2K23, I think it's going to continue that. I think the trees are going to look a lot better, and I'm hoping this course looks a lot better because of it. So I'm really excited to port this thing over to 2K23. But let's go ahead and play this hole and get an idea of how this hole is playing. So it's into a pretty good wind here, so it's just driver. It's going to be driver all day when it's into the wind like this. Yeah, this should end up in the fairway and be in a pretty good spot. I think this hole's going to look really good, especially once we get 16 complete. It really looks bare up here on this right side, but as you can see over here to the left, like if you just look over this way, I think the hole is looking fantastic. But okay, we're into a 15-mile-an-hour wind, so we've got to play this one pretty far here. Ooh, that could be a pretty good shot, I think. Yeah, look at that. So you've got this little... If you look at the green as a whole right here, you can see that it kind of all slopes down towards the waste area, which is definitely what it would be like in real life. You wouldn't have it sloping away from the waste area. That's where all the water is going to flow, is down to there. And I think this green plays really nicely. It has this little tier up here where this pin is, and then it's got a nice little front tucked in there pin where you can use the backstop and get it really nice and close. And then you've got these two left pins over here that are kind of closer to the waste area, and I'm still deciding whether or not what I'm going to do with the waste area, but I think now that I've seen it a little bit better, especially from like this view, I think I'm going to have it be not out of bounds. I'm just going to have it be very penalizing. If you hit it down into that area, you're going to very much struggle to get it back into play and try and get a good score out of it. But yeah, there you go. We got a good idea of it. Made birdie as well. Always feels good. But yeah, I'm really happy with the progress we made on today's hole. I'm really excited to port this over to 2K23. This is the final episode that we have in 2K21, and it's a little bittersweet because I've had a lot of fun playing this game, and I'm hoping that the designer is better in the next game. I'm really excited to check it out and see how this course ports over. But thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think of the progress we made today. What do you think I should do with the rest of this? Should I add on to this rocky cliff if I'm given enough plant meter when I port this thing over? I tend to think I should, but I'm not 100% decided. There's maybe some other things I could do with that cliff face over there. I think this side looks really good with the heavy rough going all the way down to the bunker. I think the slope is small enough that the heavy rough actually makes some sense, and I think it looks really good from over here. It has a really clean look to it as it enters into that waste bunker. But thanks again for watching. I really appreciate it. Please consider subscribing. I would really appreciate that as well. But everyone, have a great day, and we'll see you next time in PGA Tour 2K23. Looking forward to it.